Is that something that's possible yet, where they're almost humanizing the old workflow automation, but in a slightly more humanized way, I suppose?
Yeah, I've seen it being used. So, for example, I know one lady, she's put her book into the AI, or she's got written a few books, and then she's got it so people can ask questions and it will reply as her using all the information from the books. Mm-hmm. I'm not across that technology, but I know it can be done. So it's very, very interesting in terms of some of the stuff it could do.
So hello and welcome to another edition of Better Business, Better Life. Today I am joined by Scott Bywater, who's actually based over in Sydney, not too far from where I used to live in Sydney. And he is the creator of a simple email ROI system course. And over the past 21 years, he's written for gurus and leading companies like Kerwin Ray, Jay Conrad Levinson of Guerilla Marketing fame, Mercola.com, and the Learning Annex. And he's probably one of the most sought after marketing copywriters in Australia. So super thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a really quick discussion before you came on board, and you've got quite an interesting story because you weren't born a copywriter as such, were you? So how did you get into the world of copywriting?
I came out of the womb with a typewriter, back in the day. Well, before computers. So really my story in terms of how I got started within copywriting is I come from very much a direct sales background. So I started out in door-to-door sales. I did corporate sales. I managed a call center. I did all of those sort of things. And then when I was around about early 20s anyway, I went to a Brad Sugar's event, and he's like, start up a business and get it for free, build it up, and then sell it. I said, well, that sounds good. But I was very green at the time, so it was a bit of a baptism by fire. So we did okay with the marketing, but we struggled quite a bit, with not much experience. So then I left that, and I was like, what am I going to do next? And I took a classified ad, which I took on credit because I was struggling a bit at the time. The classified ad was not expensive either. And I put an ad out which said Marketing Genius Proven Results. And I got one client, I got two, another client, got another client, but I was still sort of struggling doing that. And then my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, saw an ad for a copywriter. And she said, you should go for this job, women's intuition or whatever you might call it. So she knew, and I went for it. And long story short, the copywriting manager really liked me because we had to write a letter in there. And I'd been writing quite a bit of copy for clients and all that sort of thing. The HR manager didn't because my career wasn't exactly steady at that time. And I didn't get the job, but I got the confidence. And my income, as soon as I positioned myself as a copywriter, my income jumped probably 10 times. So it taught me a lot about the power of positioning, the power of niching, and that you can have exactly the same skill set, but if you position it to a market at the right time, then it can make a huge difference. And I know young people today, and they're like, oh, maybe I should get into copywriting. And I'm not always necessarily a fan of it because it works really well for me now because I've got 20 years experience and all that sort of thing. But the market has changed, and particularly with AI and all that sort of thing. So it's all about right market, right time, where there's a bleeding neck problem and there isn't a lot of people to solve it, is really where you want to be positioning yourself.
Sure. And we're going to come back to that AI thing in a short moment because that's really important in terms of changing the way these things are done. But yes. I always ask my guests, because it's really nice to get to know them a little bit better, what is the thing you're most proud of professionally and what's the thing you're most proud of in your personal life?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think proud of professionally is the fact that it's just growing the business, but also within that, like becoming far better with people and relationships and that sort of thing. So what I've found throughout my career is that as I have become better relationally, it's made a big impact. It's made far more flow in the business, but also it makes the business so much more enjoyable. So years ago, I started up a group, which almost happened by chance, but it's now it has a lot of the top marketers from Australia in it and that sort of thing. And it's something that I really love doing. So that's on a professional level. On a personal level, I think, just like it would be, a lot around like family. So like the time I've been able to spend with my son and being able to guide him and that sort of thing has been, super, super valuable. And also just sticking to my guns over the years, despite, even if it went against social approval or what you should do or that sort of thing. So lifting integrity over and above, let's say, public acceptance or social approval or that sort of thing. So I'm very proud of that from a personal level.
Perfect. And as you mentioned, your girlfriend became your wife, so that's a pretty, it's been a good journey as well.
Yes.
Hey, tell me, how big is the business now?
So in terms of the size of the business, so it's like I run it, primarily myself. Then my wife does all the, the accounts, the finances, all of that sort of thing is a huge support there. And then I've got several team members who I will work with and outsource to and all of that sort of thing. So so it's it's a small business, but it's there's a lot of support surrounding that that business. So
Cool. And so I guess we'll come on to, I want to talk about your expertise in a moment, but in terms of actually running a business, what have been the biggest lessons you've learned in running that business? And have you had any big challenges thrown your way as you were growing?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge has always been from a scale perspective, and I think the challenge is to let go of things when in order to buy back your time, so to speak. So I think that's really critical, and I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. Because as a business owner, we'll only grow, and this has been probably one of my biggest learnings, we'll only grow to a point of pain, and then we'll stagnate ourselves. So I see this with a lot of people in the marketing space, because a lot of marketers could grow a much bigger business because you understand marketing, you understand how to get customers, right? Yeah. But if you'll always be putting the foot on the pedal if you're not, if there's too much pain in that growth, if that makes sense. So it's like, okay, I'm chewing up a lot of time on admin stuff. Can I get someone who can take 5 hours off my plate? On delivery, can I get someone who can take 8 or 10 hours off my plate so that I can focus on what I am great at, which for me is sales, strategy, marketing, networking. And the more I find I put my energy into that, the more money I make, which means the business can grow, and then it becomes far more enjoyable as well.
Yeah. It's one of my philosophies. We call it delegate and elevate. And so we've all got this unique ability, which is where we know what we love and are really great at, and actually where we add the most value to the business as well. And so if every single person in your business is working in that zone of genius and really doing what they love and they're great at, and you're delegating everything else down, that's how you build a business. But it's hard to let go sometimes, right?
Yes, 100%, 100%. Yeah. I think that's the entrepreneurial struggle, isn't it? So
it is for all of us. Yeah. Okay. So you're here as an expert today, and I guess one of the things that I saw, you do a whole range of different talks and things, but we've been talking a lot about AI in business. So I run like a mid-sized business community group with myself, and I also obviously work with EO and EOS, and everybody's talking about AI, and I suppose AI in marketing is the biggest thing, but AI in business overall is just massive in terms of what it can do. Tell us a bit about how you're using it now with your clients and what that looks like, and what are the pros and the cons. Just give me a bit of an overview of AI and email.
Absolutely. So AI, I'm finding, is I started my AI journey last year before it was all the rage, and I was primarily using Jasper as the technology. And then this year, ChatGPT just went wild, and I'm like, I got to learn something else. It's like crazy. The learning curve never stops. But the way I'm sort of using it, and I'm loving ChatGPT, by the way. So is number one is a brainstorming buddy, because within copywriting there's quite a bit of research. So understanding the customers, their fears, their pains, their desires, their beliefs, no matter what target market you're in. So you can brainstorm all that. And AI is actually faster at brainstorming stuff than we humans can think about it. Like we're far better with critical thinking, but the AI is very, very powerful with all that. So it's great. You can go, what does an accountant, what are accountants' clients' biggest pains? And they'll go, bang, 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 prioritize them, great, and so on. So it's very powerful from that perspective, I'm finding. And then when it comes to the writing, it's incredibly powerful, but you need to know how to prompt it and how to play with it. And what I've found has worked particularly well is in using transcripts with the AI. So rather than just plugging it in and saying, hey, write me an email from an accountant to their clients about how to save tax, as an example. So it's taking another step back and using the AI to go, what are the fears, pains, desires, beliefs of this person? Okay, we're going to pick one pain. What is 10 articles we can actually write, 10 email articles we can write about that pain? And then you get one pain, right, about paying tax. Maybe it's the headaches of having to go through all the numbers and all that sort of thing. So you go, okay, around that, what are the key 5 points? And you might brainstorm this one-on-one. What do you want to talk about? And then you'll go back and, okay, if I'm going to talk about that, I'm going to touch 1, 2, 3, 4. They're the points. Okay, that's a framework for what you're going to say. Now I'm going to interview you, and you're just going to talk about that. So then you'll talk about that, we'll transcribe that, and we'll plug that into the AI and ask the AI to write an email based off a successful email format that we've got. So there's stuff like that you can do, which is incredibly powerful. And then if you've also got access to someone's, let's say, their Instagram feed or their blog posts or that sort of thing, it can really deliver the language in a way which is particularly personal to them. So it's
that's what I was wondering about, because I think a lot of the stuff that I see coming out of it can be quite generic, but if you can combine it, it's a little bit like Facebook marketing, right? If you can kind of go, hey, these are our audience that we're looking at, show us other people that are like this. That's what the AI is doing, is it's taking your own personal personality, your tone, the way you do things, and overlaying it on what it's discovered to be the things that people want to hear about.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, like, the thing to be really wary of with AI is that you don't want to sound like a robot who's just, because there's going to be more and more content going out there. It's like when the iPhone came out and there's all of a sudden videos everywhere, so then it's harder to cut through, right? Because everyone's shooting video. So it's supply and demand. So you've still got to make it quite unique and quite special. And by the transcript, it's actually you're using the transcript to create the email, which means it is in your voice, it is your skills. It's not, you're not just handing it all over to the AI and getting the AI to just create generic nonsense in your, do you know what I mean, in your area. So, and I think that's a balance. And I look at AI, it's a little bit, the iPhone's a great example, right? So I know people who can create magic with the iPhone, in terms of, I know videographers who go, the AI is amazing with the edits and they can create Hollywood type movies using an iPhone, but I can't. Do you know what I mean? Because
it's just not your thing.
I don't have those skills, but it's the same tool. And I think AI is going to be very similar. You've got to take the time to know how to use it if you wanted to punch out stuff that just isn't generic fluff sort of thing. So,
Actually, it's really interesting because I forget this. My father was a professional photographer. And so in his spare time, and he had a full-time job as a salesperson as well, but he would say he kind of taught us how to actually frame photographs and things. And so we got a lot of the background about what makes a really great photograph. So when I take a photograph with my iPhone, it's pretty much always a good photograph, not because of the iPhone necessarily, but just because of the way I frame it. And I can give that exact same iPhone to my assistant, whom I absolutely love dearly. But, she said to me, oh, your photos look amazing and mine never quite look that. So same example, right? It's like actually we're both using exactly the same tools. It's just that I have, back in the day, been taught how to do that. So therefore I approach it in a slightly different way.
Yes, yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
It's a skills, right? I give the another analogy I give is like a chainsaw. It's a really powerful tool, but if you don't know how to use it, you can chop your arm off.
Dangerous. Yeah. And actually, I hadn't really thought too much. But you're right. You've got to. It is another tool in the toolkit that you have to learn how to use properly and how to use effectively to get the best results from it. Otherwise, you're just going to get very generic, blah kind of stuff out. Or actually, for some people, I think they try it and go, that's not not what I want, and they give up. Whereas in actual fact, it is just a computer after all. It has to be told what to do. It has to be directed in terms of where it needs to go. It can just think at a million times faster than we can.
Yes, yeah. And another thing it's really good at, and I've used it for this, like I had an email series I did recently, and the client was like, the tone's it's not quite right in terms of, what we want. And so anyway, I plugged the copy into the AI and said, make it sound, more professional, more conservative, all of that sort of thing. And it just did a brilliant job. But it took the same copy and it was tweaks to the copy, but it made it far faster than I could have. So it's just there's so many different variations in terms of the ways you can use it. Another way I used it, I had someone come to me and they were an agency, and the Facebook ads weren't converting for as well as they wanted to for a business opportunity. And I thought, I wonder if, because I don't know if you're familiar with Chet Holmes, he had that advertising strategy for getting like top salespeople. So I put into the AI, do you understand this advertising for like Chet Holmes's advertising thing for getting salespeople? And they're like, yes, I do. I go, okay, great. Well, can you apply that to this ad? And anyway, it just punched it out. So it's really, and then it punched it out and it was really good. And I made a few tweaks and then we could then test it. But it couldn't do it if I didn't know that framework.
That's right. So
understanding frameworks and being quite strategically knowledgeable is really important, because I couldn't do it like as a coder. I know AI can do incredible things for coding, but I couldn't do what a coder could do with AI because I don't know anything about coding.
No. And I saw a really good example this other day where you can actually have it produce complete spreadsheets for you that does all the things you want it to. But again, you've got to understand how to ask it to do that. So if you're not an expert in sort of spreadsheets or how they're structured, it can still be a little bit difficult to get the right input, to get the right output. But anyway, it is fascinating. And what I want to know, though, email. Surely email is dead. When I look at my email inbox and the amount of emails I get and the fact that I put them all to spam these days. I know it's not really, but I want to just sort of put that out there to you. What do you say to people who say email's dead, it doesn't work?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I would say 100% categorically wrong, like in terms of email being dead. So and I'm a big fan of email because I built my business on email in the beginning. It was a very simple model. It was like, get people on your email list, email them really good content, and make offers, not all the time, but make offers. And it's the same now. Like according to litmus.com, I think email gets a 36 to 1 return for every dollar invested, which is far greater than Facebook, Google, YouTube, any of these sort of things. Obviously, if you want to scale big, you need to use the cold traffic mediums because you might have an email list of 500, 1,000 people, that sort of thing. But if you're not using it, it's almost like you've got this, it's the acres of diamonds story. You've got these diamonds in the backyard and all you got to do is dig them up and they're there. And that's what I look at with email. And most people who've got an email list, even if it's only a couple of hundred clients or 500, even if it's 50, you can actually you can communicate with those 50 people all at once, and they already know, like, and trust you. We know the story that it's 5 times easier to sell to someone who's already bought from us than to get a new customer. It's so powerful. And so I've found for actually booking my calendar, email is so powerful, and it leverages every other medium. So if you're selling a reasonably high ticket item, like we are, like with coaching services, and it requires education, that sort of thing. Number 1, get them on your list. Number 2, build credibility. Number 3, get them to book an appointment with you. and it's a very simple formula. And I think it works better I think it's the most underutilized opportunity in 2023. And I like to zig when everyone else is zagging.
It's just interesting. I'm a marketer from way back. That was actually my original training was in sales and in marketing. And I always found that people had kind of flicked to email because it was an easy thing to do, but they weren't using it really effectively. And I've actually found that going back to good old-fashioned sending somebody something, like a physical something, is actually quite a good way to get in front of people. People go, oh, but why would I do that when, I can send out an email to 100 people and I can only afford to do that 20 people. But it's actually, if you use the right tool for the right job, you get the best results. And I think that's what it comes down to, isn't it?
Yeah, and particularly if you've got a high ticket clients that you're going after, like how do you stand out? Like people go, I get so many emails and I delete them. And don't get me wrong, like email is not as powerful as it was 20 years ago because nobody was getting any emails in their inbox. There wasn't all this competition, but nothing's as effective as it was. But again, that's even zigging while others are zagging to another degree, is doing lumpy mail in the mail. Like if your average client is worth 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, why wouldn't you spend $5 or $10 to get something in the mail where they go, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. So
and I do it with some clients, and I will say to me, if their services are worth a lot more than that, why wouldn't you even spend like $1,000 to get a $100,000 client? Why not? If that's going to work. But anyway, we're digressing. I think the problem with email for me is that I've seen a lot of people really abuse it. People who just literally and not just email, but the LinkedIn messages where they connect with you and immediately you suddenly get an email and they just want to bleh at you about who they are and what they do and please book a call for me. I'm pretty much guessing that's not the right way to try and attract somebody, because they're the ones that I actually completely delete and ignore.
Yes.
You're looking at a different way of emailing people, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think people fall into two traps with email. So one is what I call what you just described, which is a scorched earth approach, right? And I've seen companies do it over the years, and it does work for a while, but it's a little bit like blowing up the reef. Do you know what I mean? To catch some fish. So then it's like it's not worth anything because you've just you've killed your list, so to speak. The other one is a love letters approach, where all you do is you send out amazing content and you never ask for anything. Yeah. So which is great, and you build incredible relationships and trust and all that sort of thing. But at some stage, you're running a business, so you need to ask. So I use a methodology I call the third way, which does both. So occasionally you might send out a scorched earth type email when you want to get a result, or you've got an event coming up or a webinar or something like that. But for the most part, what you're doing is you're actually combining the two within the one email. So you're leading with value, and then you're doing a small segue at the end for those who are interested to maybe download a report. And then after they've downloaded the report, you request a meeting or something like that. So it's, or you're sending them to a sales page, but it's their choice to actually click on it. So it's like the 90-10 sort of thing, where it's 90% value and then a 10% segue at the end. So, and I find that's incredibly effective. And amazingly, like the whole get them to download, ask someone to download a report. I'm a big fan of having multiple special reports. Like most people might have one. Whereas why not have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50? So whatever email topic you're talking about, you can direct them. Let's say you're running a digital agency, to a report about Google AdWords or Facebook ads or TikTok or whatever the topic is that particular prospect might be interested in.
And that's what I was going to ask next is is AI being used, because you've got the initial kind of copywriting and getting stuff out there, but what about being able to use it to actually then put people in the right direction, respond to them in a certain way? Can you do that? Is that something that's possible yet, where they're almost humanizing the old workflow automation, but in a slightly more humanized way, I suppose?
Yeah, I've seen it being used. So, for example, I know one lady, she's put her book into the AI, or she's got written a few books, and then she's got it so people can ask questions and it will reply as her using all the information from the books. I'm not across that technology, but I know it can be done. So it's very, very interesting in terms of some of the stuff it could do. Is that sort of what you meant in terms of the?
Absolutely. Because if you think the classic kind of old workflow automation was, it was almost like one of those old decision charts where, if they respond this, then pop them down there, if they respond this. But it was very kind of set in stone in terms of that's what you did. But I'm thinking AI must be able to learn a little bit about you on the way. And so pick up on what you've clicked on, and then how could you present something. I don't know. I'm just thinking there must be some real opportunities to get much more personal. And I just know that when you use ChatGPT, for example, when you talk to it, it is almost like talking to a human. Like it responds to you in almost a human way. I wonder how far that technology will actually go in terms of responding like a human and giving you a really personalized answer as opposed to just a generic one.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I know I'll have to check in with a friend of mine. He runs one of the leading sort of decision tree companies called LeadsHook, and Nick Thackeral, and he's right across everything that's happening with AI. So I'll have to ask him how he's doing it with how AI is incorporating with the workflows. Because years ago it was sort of like it was decision tree, and if they said, like you would ask them a question, and you could go and have like 57 different paths if you wanted to, but there were specific questions on each path. So it would be interesting to see if the AI can actually read it and then really direct them and personalize it depending on what they said, or have them type in something. Which
and
is
also
quite exciting.
change the lingo and stuff too, right? Because we're talking, it's very casual, and so if somebody responds in a certain way, I wonder if it can pick up and kind of take on board that kind of the way that they're speaking as well. Anyway, we're digressing. Yes. back to email, back to copywriting. So it's great to use as a tool, but it's not the be all and end all. We know that you've got to know how to ask it the right questions. You've got to. I'm assuming also you don't just take what it says, copy and paste it, and go, right, that's it, it's done. You're looking at it and going, actually, does this meet the real needs? Is there anything that's kind of obvious? Because at the end of the day, it is a computer; it can make mistakes. What are the kind of key tips for people who are thinking about using email and using AI in their business?
Yeah. So it's a different way of writing. Like, I've been playing around with it as much as I can, just because I know I'd need to be across this new technology, because that's where the future's heading towards. And it does save a bit of time. It doesn't necessarily just wipe out and you press a button and the whole job's done. So you're going in, you're sort of editing those. So, for example, I will use it for headlines, subject lines, all of that sort of thing. And it's pretty amazing. Like, it can spit back 12 suggested. You put an email in, it'll spit back 12 suggested headlines, and then you can choose the best one.
Wow.
I will very rarely use the AI's headline exactly word for word, but I will use it for inspiration. So I'll go, that's really good, and if I can find this and that, and that's a really good headline. So it's still that human intuition, but it's a bit like having a brainstorming buddy, right? So if you could have someone there, but it's quiet and it doesn't distract you, which is beautiful. Because if you had a brainstorming buddy there when you're talking about writing, you'd be talking for half an hour to create this subject line, and that's not practical in a business sense if you're just trying to come up with a subject line and get it out. So you can come back and it gives you 12 to 15 ideas, or you can ask for 50 ideas if you want, and then you just go, bang, I'll choose that one. Let's go, let's go, sort of thing. So it's very powerful from that perspective.
Cool. So the work that you do with clients, what is it you do? What do you do for companies?
Absolutely. So I'm very good in terms of turning email lists. One of the specialties is turning email lists into money, or helping to grow that email list as well. So if you've got a smaller list and you want to grow it, but I really like focusing on email first. Even if we're doing a whole heap of other strategic things with copy and building out funnels and all of that sort of thing, I love working on email first because I find it's the fastest path to the sale. So in the last month, I started working with a client. He had about 8 or 10,000 on his email list, and we started running webinars to it, and we created over $50,000 in the first month. So that's a nice win where I can enter and go, hey, here's a quick win, bang, the trust is established, and then we can work on other aspects of the business as well. But there's nothing else, because as you know, a cold campaign, it takes time to get it to work, to split test it, to measure it, all of that sort of thing. It might fail a few times before you get it to work. Whereas email, you've got the trust, which is the hardest thing to do. You've got the relationship, and then you can overlay it. So I'm shooting, when I come in and work with an email list, it's like I've got the ball, and it's in if you can imagine a soccer field, I've got the ball in the box, and it's much easier to kick the ball in than if I'm trying to shoot it from the other side of the field. So that's why I love to specialize in that, or to focus at least initially on the email side. And it's really the copy and the strategy to get that campaign executed.
And here's an interesting question that's just kind of popped into my mind. I mean, quality versus quantity. So, you've talked about sometimes people have only got small email marketing lists. Other people have got massive email marketing lists. Some people just add you as soon as they've met you, they pop you onto their email marketing list. I get emails from people that I've met at a networking event. I certainly haven't asked to be communicated with by them, and they just fit me on the list, which means I'm very quick to unsubscribe because why? I don't even know why I'm there. So, quality versus quantity. What do you have to say about that?
It's a great question, because I learned this years ago, because I had a paid newsletter where people were paying, I think there was about 200 people paying $67 a month or something at the time. And I did a launch for $1,000 product, and we made, just trying to remember how many sales we made. I think we made 42 sales at $1,000. My list at the time was about 7,000. And I just sent the emails to everyone on the list. Then I broke down and I looked at who bought, and 80 to 90% of those buyers came from my paid list of 200, and like 10 to 20% of the buyers came from the other 6,800. Yeah. So you can see that list of 200 was way more valuable than the other 6,800. So it's definitely a quality versus quantity. I know another guy, and he does a lot of joint ventures with different people who will email to him, and he'll run webinars, and he can sometimes he got a better response from a guy who had a list of 33 people than he would get from someone with a list of 10,000 sort of thing. So because those 33, like, they were existing clients, he had trust, he had relationships, and maybe the 10,000 had been scorched earth so many times and they just didn't care about the person who was sending them. So, I
think that's absolutely right. I mean, having that trust in the beginning actually is going to help you hugely in terms of that conversion rate. So, okay. Definitely quality over quantity in that example.
Yes.
Okay. We could probably talk all day because I'm a marketer from way back and I love all this stuff. I love AI, I love technology. But for people who are listening in, who are kind of running their business and they're going, I have got this email list, I don't really quite know what to do with it. What are the 3 top tips that you would give them? Or actually any top tips that you might have. You run a business as well, so happy to share anything that you've learned in your life, in your journey, in your business, or around what you do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll zone in on email because I think that's quite specific. So in terms of email, the first thing I would do is survey your list. And if you haven't mailed it for a while, don't just go straight out for a survey. Start to just supply some great content, great content to them that they'll value, and then maybe after half a dozen emails, then send out a survey and ask them what their challenges are with your industry. Ask them what questions they would ask you if they could, all of that sort of thing, and then base your content calendar on that. So that's the first thing, is survey your list. The second thing I would do is I would suggest is build special reports and landing pages around that, because what a lot of people what happens with a lot of people with email is they'll get and that's where the love letters come in, is that they'll get the ball up to the box, but they'll never kick the goals. And that often happens. You see this on social media, and that people posting content all the time, but they don't have any way to move that relationship to the next level. So start by actually hiring a striker and getting those reports done, getting those landing pages done, all of that sort of thing. And then third is just start writing regular emails. And too many is far better than too little. So my understanding, Yeah, so
I want to explore that further, yes, because I have this thing about consistency, and people always say to me, and I'm always amazed because I send out this newsletter every week without fail, and I very rarely get any feedback from it. So I think, is this a waste of time? And then every once in a while, I'll bump into somebody, or something actually, I bumped into somebody in Melbourne Airport, and they went, "You're Deborah, aren't you?" And I went, "Sorry, do I know who you are?" And they're like, "No, but I listen to your podcast and I read your newsletter." And it's like they are actually sort of paying attention. So I do wonder about this whole regularity. Does it work?
Yes, yeah, and I think it's really critical. Like I heard recently, at least with email, I think this applies podcasts, email, everything, right? But I heard recently, I was chatting with someone because I heard someone had this massive list and he hadn't mailed it for 5 years. So I called up a guy I know who's quite technical and understands the technical aspect, and he's like, "You know what?" He says after 4 months, when you try and mail, the CRMs, they don't like it, and often you can just get blacklisted. So
really?
if you ignore your list, and this was a big list, I'm like, he's just let go of it, just literally potentially flush millions of dollars down the drain. Like that was it, like, because I think email lists are gold, right? So if you don't mail it, you and plus you lose a relationship, you lose a trust. It's like a friend you knew at school that you haven't chatted with for 25 years, and then you call them up and ask them to join your Amway business. They're not going to be happy about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
so that keeping in touch is really critical. So I tend to I emailed my list every weekday for over a decade. And had very little people loved it because you almost become if it's the right type of content, you almost become it's like talkback radio. Yeah, you're just in there every day. They start to like you, trust you, and it's a beautiful thing. But always the call to action is critical though, because I find if you don't have the right calls to action, you don't get it nearly as much feedback as if you do that part properly. So
So is there a magic special? I don't think frequency. Is there a magic frequency? I mean, is it daily? Is it weekly? Does it depend on who you're talking to? I mean, how would you answer that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it depends somewhat, like on the industry. Like let's say if I was doing a funnel for plumbers or something like that, I would have the emails going out really, really quickly because I know they're going to make a quick decision. Whereas if it was for builders, then it's probably not as important to be as consistent or as regular because they're going to make a decision maybe over 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever, because it's a big decision. So that's something to keep in mind. I think once a week is probably a really good sweet spot where you're comfortable, where most people are comfortable doing it. Like most people, they hear once a day or a few times a week and they freak out and go, "Oh, that's too much. I'm going to annoy people. I'm going to get unsubscribes," all that sort of thing. So, and then once a month at an absolute minimum, I would say, because otherwise they just forget who you are if it's less than that. And then when you do mail them 6 months later, they go, "Who are they?" And they think it's spam and they complain about it to the ISPs, and you get a bad reputation. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Actually, I know you're absolutely right. Because I'm just thinking, I have got some emails that literally come in every day, and they're short and they're sharp, and they give it a bit of value, and I actually enjoy sort of having a quick skim through them, and you don't mind because you know that there's something in there that you might want to actually look at. Not emails just about telling people about who you are and what you want to sell them.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, look, I'm sure there's a whole lot more we could learn about it, but is there somewhere people can go to find out more about email and AI and what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'd encourage, if anyone's listening and they want some cheat sheets just on writing with AI, if they go to simpleemailroi.com/AI, and they can download my ultimate AI email writing cheat sheet. And there's 3 prompts in there which will allow them to whip up emails in minutes, even if they're a non-writer and without being salesy. So that's probably a really good place to start.
Fantastic. That's really cool. And if somebody wanted to have a chat to you personally, how would they get hold of you?
Yeah, so if you want to get in touch with me personally, probably the best way is to shoot me an email just to Scott at copywritingthatsells.com.au. So that's Scott at copywritingthatsells.com.au.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, tell me, do you have an ideal client? Like, who do you love to work with? Who's your favourite kind of client?
Yeah, I mean, it generally falls under two categories. So one is if you've got a decent sized email list that you're not leveraging, then I can turn that into money generally if it's a quality list fairly quickly. So that's number one. And number two, if you're spending a fair bit on ads, then we can leverage that fairly quickly too by either changing the ads, changing the funnels, all of that sort of thing. So, and the reason those two is because there's the most leverage in those sort of businesses where we can get quick results. So they're sort of the sweet spot, if you like.
The low-hanging fruit, the stuff that you can actually kind of turn into money pretty much quickly. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Hey, well, look, it's been a real pleasure. I've learned quite a bit. I've taken a few notes here. I've just had a quick look at the cheat sheets too. So go to simpleemailroi.com/AI, and that is where you will find the ultimate AI email cheat sheet. You can also obviously get in contact with Scott. And Scott, I'd just like to say thank you so much for spending the time with us and sharing your knowledge and your journey.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been a lot of fun, and thanks for hosting me on your podcast.
Absolute pleasure. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Likewise.
Thanks.